Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Giants have signed Russell Wilson to a one-year contract worth $10.5 million guaranteed and could be worth up to $21 million. So this wasn't something that I was expecting after the Giants signed Jameis Winston. But the more I thought about it after that, it really was very minimal money. And I kind of alluded to that in the Jameis Winston episode, that Winston was going to be the backup. Now, definitely the backup. Right? There's a chance that maybe he could be more of a bridge quarterback, but he's clearly at best the #2. Russell Wilson is going to be your starter by and large for the 2025 season. Now, what does this mean for the #3 pick? Is really the interesting question. I think now the thought of, because look, unfortunately, I think Cam Ward just not possible. I think the Titans are going to be taking Cam Ward at #1. And so Shedeur Sanders is potentially in play and still is, but you have to think that the thoughts of him on the Giants have to decrease a bit. The good thing is, um, you know, even though the Giants have signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, that I think that if Shedeur Sanders was available and the Giants are interested in him, I think that they probably still would take him. We don't know. They may not think that highly of him. Also, there's no guarantee that he'll be there. We don't know what the Cleveland Browns are doing at #2. There is a chance that they could trade down and someone trades up somehow and grabs him, right? You don't have that guarantee. So that's the other thing in the mix here. So very interesting though, the fact that you have in your quarterback room, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston couldn't be two different types of personalities. And then you even throw Tommy DeVito into the mix, who is very irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, right? Tommy DeVito, um, like in the Giants draft, the quarterback, whether that be #3 or later, like Tommy DeVito, not great news for him overall, unless somehow they don't draft the quarterback. But I have a hard time believing that. And I'm not really a fan of going like the second round route. They may do it, right? If they somehow think highly of Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart, it's not in like the things that have happened here makes that more realistic than I think it had been. But it makes it very intriguing to me because if they hadn't signed Russell Wilson, then I think that it'd be hard not to believe that Shedeur Sanders was somehow, some way going to be a New York Giant. Now you really don't know. It's really up in the air, which is a good thing to have that you don't absolutely need a quarterback. But what the Giants do need is a future quarterback, a franchise quarterback. And they don't have that on their roster right now. And that still needs to be the main goal, whether that be this year or next year, depending on what they decide. And so they are increasing the ability within the quarterback room, which they needed to do. Now, um, as far as Daniel Jones, Drew Lock last year to Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston this year, I would say that's a step up, but not markedly. I don't necessarily know that's a huge, huge improvement. I mean, financially it is in the sense that Daniel Jones is being paid $40 million per season, which, now it's a lot less where Russell Wilson, it's a 10.5. Again, it can be worth up to $21 million, but still way less than Jones. But there's a lot of intrigue here. And the good thing is we can say now unequivocally that Aaron Rodgers, he is not in the conversation. He still was. When Jameis Winston was signed, I still felt as if I didn't want Aaron Rodgers at any point, personally. Understanding that he isn't he is above Jameis Winston skill wise, even at this point in Aaron Rodgers' career. And I would even say that Aaron Rodgers is probably slightly better than Russell Wilson, but there's no need to really get into that. I just didn't think it was worth the headache of having Rodgers on the team. Wanted to stay away from that completely. With Russell Wilson, not to say that Russell Wilson has the greatest reputation with teammates, but there's going to be less, I think, headaches off the field, presumably. But it's not like he has such a squeaky clean reputation. I mean, Jameis Winston seems to be more of a well-liked commodity in an NFL locker room. That said, it's very interesting with Russell Wilson. And let's talk about sort of his game currently and his career. Russell Wilson still throws a very good deep ball, one of the best deep ball passers in the league, but very limited in other regards. He doesn't really like to throw the ball in the middle of the field. Is not one to throw many interceptions, right? So he plays a bit of a smart game, but he takes a lot of sacks and doesn't handle pressure well. So definitely different from Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is extremely aggressive, too aggressive, where he'll throw 2 interceptions. Russell Wilson's the other way, where he may leave some plays on the field a little bit, doesn't want to take that chance of making the tight throw in the middle of the field. And again, if he's feeling that pressure, he's going to take the sack. So um, with Russell Wilson, there's still a little bit of a slight bit of running ability, mobile enough, more mobile than Jameis Winston is. It used to be a much bigger part of Russell Wilson's game early in his career, but it's not like it's not something that is completely gone from his game. But look, like he's taken a lot of sacks. I mean, in 11 games last year, took 33. In Denver, it's like a hell of a lot. 55 his first year in Denver. But this he's still got ability. Look, I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson fan these days, but given what was out there, and given where the Giants are at with nothing confirmed or known as far as the draft, hey, bring in as many bodies and try to increase that talent in that room. Take as many swings as you can, and that's why I feel like it's gonna be extremely interesting to see what they do at number 3 if Shedeur Sanders is there. But hey, you can't hate the idea of a Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, joining the Giants. That's those are really, really big cornerstone pieces to bring in. And I think there's a good chance that they do go that way. If you ask me right now, I don't think Shedeur Sanders is gonna be a Giant, but I can't say that with certainty. I really, really cannot. I think it's still very much in play. I think there still is interest there, but I think between the idea that he may not be there at 3 and that the Giants maybe aren't completely all in on him just leads me to believe the way they're going about this, that they are very much prepared to not have him. And that leads you down the road of what the Giants do in the second round. And, because I do think they probably will draft a quarterback at some point. I would have to believe that that would happen, but they've left themselves an ability to not do it. And so as far as Russell Wilson's concerned, he was drafted in 2011, sorry, 2012 by the Seattle Seahawks in the third round. Originally, he was at NC State um, from 2007 to 2010, and his last year in college was spent at Wisconsin. And really just a big, big success story. Russell Wilson, is a Super Bowl champion and actually won his Super Bowl at MetLife Stadium in his second season, I might add as well. I mean, just so much success. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson from 2012 through 2021 really he had winning seasons every year except his last. Um, the Seahawks were, one of the flagship. I mean, that's maybe not the right word. One of the most consistent franchises in the league for just about a decade. And Russell Wilson was at the center of that, putting up good numbers year in, year out. Russell Wilson is someone who has been in 10 Pro Bowls. And I might add that he actually was, I mean, see, a slight asterisk there where he was actually a Pro Bowler this past season with Pittsburgh, but take that with a major grain of salt. He was not Pro Bowl level, but still, really put up so many good years with the Seattle Seahawks. Will always be a legend there for what he did. But then he was traded to Denver and didn't have as much success with the Broncos. And that was a bit of a failure. In his first year, he was with Nathaniel Hackett, and that was an abject disaster going 4-11 with them. 16 touchdowns, 11 receptions. That was really his worst ratio by far of his career. Not even close. Someone who really is known for, just he doesn't throw that many interceptions. And that was tied for his most with only 16 touchdowns, which was the least of his tied for the least of his career if you include this past season. But this past season was better. 16 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. Um, so that was a rough year. But then Sean Payton comes in, and I actually thought that he wasn't really half bad that second season. There are 26 touchdowns, only throws 8 interceptions. Um, you know, had 341 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. The sacks were down just a little bit, not too much. Again, he took a lot of sacks in Denver. Um, but ultimately they went in a different direction and they gave up a lot for him. I mean, that was a massive trade between the Broncos and the Seahawks. And you kind of knew that his days in Seattle were nearing its end, but it was a bit of a shocker when it happened. And I think for Denver, it did not work out well. They cut him loose, and he signed a minimum deal of you know with Pittsburgh. And he actually visited the Giants last season. I mean, there was some mutual interest there, but they stuck with what they had in Daniel Jones. And I think Russell Wilson probably saw a better opportunity with Pittsburgh where he split time with Justin Fields. And the ironic thing is that now Justin Fields with the New York Jets. So both Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks last season now land at MetLife Stadium. But Russell Wilson was out for the first maybe 5 or 6 weeks of the season. It was kind of twofold. He was hurt coming out of preseason, coming out of training camp, but he was healthy. I mean, Justin Fields did a nice job, and so I think the plan was always to have Russell Wilson be the guy. But Fields made that decision a bit difficult. But they did pull the plug on Fields when Fields was winning games. But then Russell Wilson came in there and did a very nice job. Now, for him, things kind of fell off for him in Pittsburgh by the end, but he kind of hit the ground running because there was a lot of question mark. Hey, why are you taking Justin Fields out? But Russell Wilson really shut those critics down initially. And again, did make a Pro Bowl appearance, as kind of weird as that is. But I mean, they were 10 and the Steelers were 10-3, only to then finish up the year with with a 5-game losing streak, including the postseason. It did not end well. And look, like he wasn't terrible, honestly, Russell Wilson, in that Baltimore Ravens game. Didn't do that bad of a job. I think he was 20 for 29, 270 yards, throwing 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. But they had a big deficit. They were down by 21 and a half. And so you try to get him back in the game. But Russell Wilson is definitely, at this point, different, but better than Jameis Winston. There's no doubt that Russell Wilson is going to be, even if they're going to draft a quarterback, Russell Wilson's, barring injury, your week 1 2025 starter. And I could think of worse scenarios. However, look, it's still very hard to be optimistic about this 2025 squad. What it means for wide receivers, somewhat similar to what Jameis Winston, but a little bit different. I think that this benefits like a Darius Slayton, absolutely. Malik Neighbors is just so versatile and he can do everything. So obviously Malik Neighbors is going to be fine with regardless who the quarterback is. And Neighbors has shown ability to make big plays down the field, down the sidelines. So he'll be good as far as that goes. The one interesting player that this really could benefit that to me is on the roster bubble is Jalen Hyatt. This fits his game perfectly. So Jalen Hyatt's not going to work with Russ Wilson. He's working with no one, but he becomes a little more interesting than before. The guy who I think is hurt by this a little bit would be like Wan'Dale Robinson and possibly the tight ends, where Russell Wilson probably won't utilize them as much as we had seen in previous years with Daniel Jones. Um, again, I like the idea that the Giants are probably going to be a team that is going to convert on more plays down the field. However, you may run into situations where there may be some 3 and outs where Russell Wilson, where there is sacks involved and they're in bad down and distance situations. But with Russell Wilson's, that he's going to put the ball in the right place. He's not going to make that many mistakes. And again, that could lead to certain plays that maybe could be hit that he's not going to go for, and that could be frustrating. But Russell Wilson's still a pretty good quarterback at this stage of his career. Um, and, a lot of, unfortunately, it's not even really worth me mentioning this, but Russell Wilson, a lot of postseason appearances. I mean, with Seattle year after year after year, and then even with Pittsburgh last season, and some good postseason numbers at that. So, look, I'm not expecting that from this team. I really am not. But the quarterback room has a much, much different look to it in many, many ways, and the personalities involved as well. It's going to be interesting. And the thing is this is just still short term. I mean, yeah, it's a 1-year contract for Russell Wilson. It was a 2-year for Jameis Winston. And that'll be as much as it for Jameis. I mean, just because it's a 2-year contract, I said it in the episode about him that may only end up being a 1-year deal when it's all said and done. So, not to say that if things don't go well with Russell Wilson, that they could, run it back in 2026 and beyond. But the biggest question still remains is what are the Giants going to do draft wise as far as a quarterback this season? And if they don't do anything this season, it's going to be next year. But I think that the Giants will leave this draft with a quarterback. It just might not be at number 3. It's very much in play now that Shador Sanders will not be a Giant. Um, it's just very interesting how all these things turn out, where the Giants won, where they could have had a quarterback as recently as last season. If they had lost games and the whole Tommy DeVito thing didn't happen, they could have ended up with a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May. That doesn't happen. And again, here, the Giants beat the Colts. And so that takes them out of the Cam Ward possibilities. And I think that if the Giants are the number one pick, I do believe, without a shadow of a doubt, they would have drafted Cam Ward. And so if that had happened, maybe this Russell Wilson signing doesn't take place. So there's just so many dominoes and so many things that happen that just change the course of the future. And we will see what the Giants decide to do about a month from now in this NFL draft. But we went from a situation where you only had Tommy DeVito in the quarterback room. Well, now you've added Jameis Winston on a 2-year contract, and now even bigger, Russell Wilson signs a 1-year deal with the New York Giants for $10.5 million, and it could be worth up to $21 million. So a lot of Giants news coming in. It's probably going to quiet down on the quarterback front until the NFL draft, and I'm very, very curious to see what are the Giants going to do at pick number 3. But again, Russell Wilson is a New York Giant.